Hello everyone, Tom Simmons here, reporting to you today from Warwick, Rhode Island, where I'm about to go out on a patrol in the Narragansett Bay to verify that Class 2 pitons are watching properly. Now that may not mean anything to many of you, but that's understandable, because I'm speaking the language of the Coast Guard. And if I was referring to the boat and talking about the port side and the starboard side and the coxswain and tying a bowline, you may not know what I'm talking about. But the reason I opened up this way is because every business, every endeavor, every organization has a language to itself. You'll find that lawyers will talk about discovery in a way and mean something different than you understand the word discovery. You'll understand that doctors and lawyers are going to talk about protocols and talk in a medical language that you may not understand. And even in business, accountants, economists, those involved in computer operations and networking, those involved in marketing, have developed a language that is very specific to their particular field. And there's really two reasons that these languages have developed, and two reasons why it's important to master the language of your discipline. The first is, it clarifies communications. It enables people to transfer information back and forth to one another in a way that is clear and understandable and makes sense, because each word or each term is loaded with a lot of context. But perhaps more importantly, by using the language of the discipline, you're conveying information to the people with whom you're speaking. And the information you're conveying is the notion that you know what you're talking about, that you are educated, that you are skilled, that you are familiar with the operations of this particular endeavor. And so for that reason, I'm going to be emphasizing a little more than I have in previous videos, the need to master business communication. And business communication is different than the way you communicate in your normal everyday life. It's important in spoken communication, but it's even more important in written business communication, that you begin to set aside some of your typical vernacular ways of speaking and begin to think and write and convey information as a business person would, or as someone in business would expect you to. Now, this is not an easy concept to deliver orally, and so I've prepared kind of a memo that you'll be able to download off of our site that specifically gives you guidelines on what to say and what not to say, and how to say it when you're speaking, but more importantly, when you're writing a business document. And I just want to go over a few of the more important ones here in this video. First, get rid of a chatty speaking style. For instance, if you decide that if you go to a website and you think that it takes too many clicks to get through it and there's too many fields to fill in and just too many things to do in order to get what you want, if you're speaking with a friend, it might be all right to say something like, who wants to go through all of that just to buy something? But if you're writing that in a business memo, or you're writing that to me, I don't want you to write the way you speak. I don't want you to write, who wants to go through all of that? I want to see you write, this process is too cumbersome for many consumers. It's a much more formal, straightforward, less chatty, friendly type of way of communicating. It's a direct communication. It's direct information without all of the, that's ridiculous, and this is to that, and this is to this. I want simple facts conveyed plainly and professionally. Secondly, you need to get rid of contractions. If you're speaking, it might be acceptable to say, this isn't necessary. But if you're writing, you really should write, this is not necessary. So isn't and don't and won't and couldn't should become is not, do not, will not, could not. And I'm going to wait for this plane to go over. Also, when communicating in a business mode, fewer words are often better than many. I think very often students are trained to believe that if they say the same thing 15 different ways and it takes up half a page, that's a good link, that somehow is good writing. And so I can remember one paper I received from a student once where the student wrote along these lines. It's a really good idea for offices to have parties now and then. Parties are a really good way to bring people together. I know that when my office has a party, it makes people feel really good about their job and each other. So I often recommend that offices have parties. Stop! Enough! If you're writing, you can handle that in one sentence. Occasional office parties are a positive way to build morale. Period. Simply because you think you have to write 3 or 4 paragraphs, or because I've asked you to write a full page, does not mean that saying the same thing 15 times in 15 different ways is conveying additional information. It's actually annoying. Business people don't have time. They don't have time to read through all of your flowery adjectives and all of your train of thought and all of your stream of consciousness because you feel strongly about something. Say it. Say it directly and move on. If what you're saying carries weight, if it's backed by evidence, if it makes sense, it will stand on its own. Saying it 20 different times doesn't make it a stronger argument. And if you are writing that, you would say, this does not, as opposed to, this doesn't make it a stronger argument. You're also going to need to use grown-up language when you write. And when I say grown-up language, I mean a lot of us get very used to very familiar vernacular. There are lots of ways we could approach this problem. No, there are many ways we could approach this problem. Start moving away from chatty language to more professional language, to more precise language. This isn't going to work. Might be okay in a conversation, but you might want to try and find a more professional way to say that. We're not going to achieve the results we had hoped for when you're writing. Pronouns. I very often will run across a piece of writing where someone will write something such as, he's not coming, so we're not going to do it. Who's he? Who's we? What's it? You may understand the context, but when you're involved in business writing, it's crossing many people's desks, or it may cross many people's desks. And if they do not have the context that you have, what you just wrote makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. So try and use specific nouns, proper nouns, rather than pronouns as you're writing, so that you can be sure you're conveying the information you want to convey. The president will not be arriving tomorrow, so we're not going to have the briefing conference as scheduled. Something very specific, as opposed to using pronouns like he and we and it. Those are very, very simple ideas. Very simple concepts. But you would be amazed at how many people writing business memos fall back into vernacular language, fall back into the language they use when they're speaking with their friends, and just go on and on. As I said, business people need brief to the point. We don't want creative writing. We don't want doubled space essays. That's one of the hardest things for students to understand and to grasp in business writing. We use single space typing. There's no need to double space. Single space. You can double space between paragraphs and double space between bullets, but when you're writing a paragraph, you single space it. There's no need to waste paper. Business memos are almost always single spaced. Business memos and business writings are also not paragraph after paragraph after paragraph after paragraph. If you have much information to convey, then convey it in bullets, so that when I pick something up, I can look right away up. The first paragraph deals with the particular problem of what should we price a particular product at, and now you've got 6 bullets suggesting why it should be a high price. We recommend a high price due to 1, high cost of transportation, 2, competitors are pricing theirs higher, 3, customers assume it's a higher quality good by placing a higher price on it. Boom, 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 boom. Don't write that all out in a paragraph. The pithier, meaning the shorter, the more exact, the more precise, the more professional sounding your writing, the more business people will look at what you've written and say, this person knows what they're doing. They're educated in this topic. They know that they're conveying much information to a busy person, and they're simply trying to get the salient points across to me, and there they are. Boom, boom, boom. That's how you want to approach your business writing. It's very different than how you've been trained. If you've been in school recently, and you've been trained to restate the question, now make your points, now restate your answer, now rephrase it, write creatively, tell me how you feel. Business people are generally not interested in any of that. We want brief, to the point, pithy information in a form that I can look at very quickly and understand what your point is and where you're going and why you're going there and what action is required on my part next. Lastly, remember who your audience is. When you're writing, when you're doing a business memo, whether it be within the office or for people outside, for potential customers, you're not communicating unless they understand what you're saying. So when I started this video and told you I was about to go out on a patrol to verify Class 2 Pronouns to make sure they were watching properly, if I was speaking within my office, within the boat crew on this Coast Guard vessel, that makes sense. They understand exactly what we're doing and why we're doing it and what we're looking for. It conveys a ton of information. But telling you that conveys almost no information whatsoever. Now, on the other hand, if I told you I'm going to be signing off because I'm about to go into the bay to make sure that privately owned buoys and navigational aids are in the right place and the right color, and the lights are properly functioning so that boats know exactly how to get in and out of channels, now you know what I'm talking about. You're a different audience than my office audience. So always be aware of who your audience is, and then use language that conveys information in as brief, in as pithy, in as precise a way as you can, and use the language of the discipline. That's my advice to you as you would tackle this week's assignments, and I think you're going to find these assignments pretty interesting. Tom Simmons signing off from Warwick, Rhode Island.